Jon Lee, let's talk about your famous biography, Che Guevara-A Revolutionary Life. 1997 is the year when it got published, and people say it's probably one of the most complex and also touching biographies. Tell me, how did your work all begin?
I began working as a journalist, as a young reporter in Central America at a time when the United States was busy helping military regimes mostly suppress Marxist insurgencies that at the tail end of the Cold War, that had been inspired or fostered to some degree by Che Guevara when he was alive. I then went off to fascinated by the phenomena of those who opt to go into the hills to fight and die for some idea, an idea of a better world. That I saw repeatedly in Latin America. I went off to write a book about guerrillas around the world, which was a kind of ad hoc anthropology, I guess, of the insurgent world, which took me 4 years, and right around the time the world was changing, 88 to 92 roughly. And I repeatedly bumped into the figure of Che Guevara, who had long since ceased to be a poster boy in the first world, but was very alive in the world of the world's insurgencies, and of a widely disparate range of insurgencies. I realized that in the years since he'd died, he'd transcended his ideology, but become a role model of an archetypal type of warrior, a role model for insurgents everywhere from Burma to the Western Sahara to Afghanistan to Palestine to El Salvador. And I realized that that I too knew little about him other than this, but he was very alive in the jungles of the world. And it was because he seemed to assemble the qualities, universal qualities of nobility of purpose, sacrifice, and ultimately blood sacrifice, which seemed to resonate with all peoples, all cultures. In 91, in 92, just on the wake of the collapse of the USSR, I began making an approach to Cuba to see if they would let me come and research his life. Cuba was, after all, where he lived, and where most of, I felt, the secrets lay. And at length, I was, on a second trip, I was offered the help of his widow, who also had his personal archives. And so I decided to move there and to research his life. And it began a 5-year project, which took me all over the world, and I lived in Cuba, and I tried to fill in the blanks of this fascinating man's life. I'm not a reporter who's spent his career in the street, in Chicago or New York. I had worked for, over 10 years in really tough places. And I came to him, as I've just said, out of a 4-year book project, which took me from one war front to another around the world, living for months on end with guerrillas. So I came to Che from the guerrilla world, not from academia. So I already had a sense, an instinct about the world and about the world he was trying to shape, and about what it meant to fight and die, or I had witnessed it many times. And so I was fascinated by Che because he seemed to be the embodiment of the kind of individual that had interested me so much, and which had taken me around the world to examine the guerrilla type. What is it that makes people all over the world and at different times and places, and is one of the motors of history, leave the fold and say, this isn't good, and I'm going to change it, and I'm going to kill and die in order to do it, for right or wrong. That's what creates a guerrilla. That's what makes a revolutionary. It's not necessarily predetermined by the existence of an ideology. Sometimes ideologies crystallize or are created. And I came to a few conclusions. I think that the kind of utopian idealism that led to such violence in the 60s particularly, was somehow a consequence, in part, of, it was a very unique moment in time. It's a moment in time in which the youth of the world felt that they could change the world. And they weren't actually wrong entirely. They did in some ways change the world. The idea that Che felt that he could literally reshape the world through armed revolution now seems a fantastical concept. Absurd. How could they think of it? But they did. Cuba, for better or worse. Why not try to replicate it elsewhere? There was no precedent. They had established the precedent. And one has to remember they were all very young, too. These were people in their 20s. Che was only 39 when he eventually died. So it was a very unique time. And they had come of age at a very unique time. Che and Fidel, who outlasts him, both came of age, were teenagers, too young to fight, and they were living in faraway countries at the time of the Holocaust, at the time of World War II, at the time of the rise and fall of fascism.
Your biography, which is about 700 pages long, it helped actually to find Che Guevara's body even 30 years after his death, so that it could be brought back to Cuba. How does it feel to have contributed to such a historical moment? I mean, Che is still a very mythic and iconic figure today.
I'm proud of that. I was really very, very pleased to have helped find his body, but it went beyond Che, or finding Che's body. It opened the floodgates to finding all of the disappeared in Bolivia, and not just from Che's guerrilla band. And it helped to, I think, it helped to assuage some of the pain and to release some of the ghosts that had been locked up in Bolivia's closed rooms. Literally, the president had to sign a decree ending military secrecy about the past in Bolivia. And I felt extremely proud of having contributed to that. I felt that it was an important thing to do. And I feel strongly that it's important for all countries to do that. It's something that's actually made me, I've felt stronger and stronger about as time has gone on. And I'm a very, almost I would say, ferocious advocate of digging up the past, wherever the bodies lie and whoever put them there. People need to know. And if you walk away, you vitiate your society. Your society is less human as a result. There is less humanity in your DNA if you do that collectively. And I think that it's a real cautionary tale. I think people's faces should be rubbed in what they've done.